Hello everyone, this is Eye on Africa for Wednesday, September 28th. Here are the headlines. Former Guinean dictator Moussa Dadis Camara is finally in court for a long-awaited trial 13 years after more than 150 people were killed in a massacre that was carried out by security forces loyal to him and his junta. As Uganda deals with an Ebola outbreak that continues to spread, authorities in Kenya are ramping up precautions to stop the virus from crossing the border. And we'll look at the real-life inspiration behind Hollywood's latest blockbuster. The Woman King tells the story of the Dahomey Amazons, an all-female army sworn to protect their kingdom in modern-day Benin. We begin in Guinea tonight, where a long-awaited trial is finally underway. Former dictator Moussa Dadis Camara and other former officials are in court over the massacre that occurred on September 28, 2009. On that day, more than 150 people were killed in the Conakry Stadium when security forces loyal to the dictator entered the building, locked the exits, and opened fire at people who had gathered for a political rally. According to eyewitness reports, at least 109 women were also raped in the onslaught of violence. Several people were trampled to death in the panic. For many victims and their families, this is a trial they've been waiting for 13 years.
Feeling sad is exhausting, still, because right now we are remembering what happened. Every year, on this day, we remember what happened on September 28th. We are reminded of what happened, we are reminded that some people have never found their dead, and we remember those who died. It is painful. We want them to recognize what they have done, because that is something they have never done. I want them to recognize they were at the stadium, they were there, and they raped and they killed. If they recognize that, it would be a first victory. If they don't, it will be a different story, because we know we are victims. But if the perpetrators do not recognize these crimes, that will be difficult to take in.
The victims are waiting for the truth, and there seems to be hope for Guineans who have never seen a trial of this sort come to an end. To them it seems like impossible hope, but let me say this, 13 years later, they can finally be hopeful.
Well, France 24's Sophie Lamotte was at the purpose-built courtroom for the first day of the trial. She sent us this report.
It's in this very courthouse, built especially for the event, and right behind those doors that 11 of the accused in one of Guinea's most awaited and arguably important trial that opened today, the massacre of the Conakry Stadium that took place 13 years ago to the day. 11 high-profile accused were present today after spending the night in prison, including high-profile Moussa Dadis Camara, who was the leader at the time after he led a coup in 2008, and protesters were gathering to oppose his re-election in 2009. So his presence was awaited and was welcomed by a silent and very heavy atmosphere in the court. Before that, there was a long inauguration before the trial opened, where officials spoke about putting an end to impunity, preventing violence against women, and holding criminals to account. Strong words that were welcomed by human rights activists. We actually got to speak to some of them. Take a listen.
It is important to note that this trial is unfolding at a complicated moment for Guinea. There is a junta government in power, and rights abuses have escalated with a ban on public protests and the opposition. It's going to be essential that this trial be conducted fairly and credibly and genuinely, and that there are larger rights reforms in the country, including the promised return to democratic rule.
We also spoke to some of the victims and survivors of this atrocity who say they still feel traumatized by these events. Some of them say they've struggled to find closure, and they hope this trial will help them find it. They hope it will also bring long-awaited justice and prevent such atrocities from happening in the future. The court has now adjourned and will meet again on October 4th. A welcome decision for those we spoke to outside the court.
Nigeria's presidential campaign has begun. Opposition candidate Atiku Abubakar launched his bid for the presidency this Wednesday, calling for a sweeping victory to save the country from a, quote, frightening descent into anarchy. Nigerians will head to the polls on February 25th to elect their new leader, who will replace Muhammadu Buhari. Abubakar, who is 75 years old, is running for a third time. He says his party has a plan to address the country's issues. Those include insecurity, separatist agitation, a sluggish economy, and inflation. On the streets of Abuja, prospective voters say they're looking forward to having their say about the direction the country is heading in.
In this 2023 election, we must vote right. We must vote right and we must vote wisely.
And this time around, I don't just want to sit back and say whatever they bring for me is okay by me. I want to take out that bold step by myself. Let me see if my vote will count or not. That is the more reason why I've made up my mind that this year I must step out, get my voter's card, and I must vote.
We are set and ready to vote for who will change our lives. We are not going to be going around the same circle every time. All the old stories, all the things that have been told us, all the lies that have been told us in campaign now, there are not going to be lies anymore. What we are going to be hearing now is facts and truth. What are you going to do? What are you going to present? What are you going to give to the people? That is what we want to see. We are tired of all these years in darkness and suffering.
Now to Uganda, where the nationwide Ebola caseload has jumped to 16 people. Another 18 are believed to also have the disease, which is fueling fears of an increasing outbreak. The death toll remains at 4, but the Ministry of Health says 17 others, classified as probable cases, have also died. The outbreak has now spread to 3 districts, all in central Uganda, and it is also having international impacts. Authorities in the Kenyan border town of Busia are increasing surveillance to prevent the virus from spilling over into their country. Laurent Bersacher has more.
Ramping up surveillance and screening measures to prevent another Ebola epidemic. Travelers arriving at the Kenyan border town of Busia had to undergo scans and temperature checks after an outbreak of the deadly virus was declared in neighboring Uganda.
The truck drivers and the travelers pass through a scanner that takes their temperature, just because we know that Ebola first presents with a high fever.
Uganda declared the outbreak last week after a case of Ebola was detected in the central Mubendi district. The country has since recorded some 23 confirmed or suspected deaths from the virus, with another 36 probable infections currently being monitored. And while the outbreak has so far largely been limited to the Mubendi area, it's placed neighboring Kenya on high alert. In Busia, residents called on authorities to do more to prevent the disease from crossing over into the country.
Many people cross this border. I want to plead with the government to implement strict measures. If they don't take it seriously, we'll all be affected.
Ebola is a highly contagious and often fatal viral hemorrhagic fever with a death rate of up to 90%. The worst epidemic yet killed over 11,000 people in West Africa between 2013 and 2016.
Now to London, where a post-colonial sculpture called Antelope was unveiled this Wednesday on Trafalgar Square. The bronze work of art was made by artist Samson Kambalu. It features John Chilembwe, a Baptist preacher and educator who led an uprising against the British in present-day Malawi back in 1915. He was later killed by colonial police. Kambalu says he designed the sculpture to shed light on Britain's colonial legacy in Africa.
He's not only putting forward the message of equality and justice, but he's also proposing radical democracy and a radical economy. Yeah. The photograph on which this sculpture is based was made in defiance of the colonial rule that forbade Africans from wearing hats in front of white people.
The sculpture is the latest in a rolling program overseen by the Mayor of London that aims to showcase contemporary art on the 4th plinth of Trafalgar Square. The program has been running since 1998, and Samson Kambalu's sculpture will remain on that plinth until 2024. Finally, Hollywood megastar Viola Davis is starring in a new film called The Woman King, the story of an all-female army sworn to protect their kingdom against foreign invaders and threats. Our team in Benin went to trace the roots of the women who were nicknamed the Amazons by Western civilizations.
In present-day Benin, the remnants of the Dahomey kingdom spread over 48 hectares. It was once one of the most powerful kingdoms in West Africa. Their warriors, the Amazons, were ultimately defeated by French colonial troops, but the dances and war songs lived on for 4 centuries.
They wrapped themselves in courage as they performed these loud songs and choreographies. They were a pack of hyenas, thirsty for blood.
Quintasi Hangbe was at the origin of the all-female army called Agoji in the local language. After the sudden death of her twin brother Kinakab, she dressed herself as a man and became monarch, becoming the first and only queen regent. Her reign was met with criticism from men refusing a female ascension to power. As her distrust in others grew, she surrounded herself with female-only bodyguards. Despite her prowess, her reign only lasted 3 years. Her younger brother killed her son, forcing her to abdicate power. The current representative inherited this club, a symbol of power from the first Amazon. There are few artifacts left by the Amazons of Dahomey. The majority were stolen by French colonial troops.
They all had a dagger like this, attached to their belt. They also had a knife called the tooth. It was made of metal, and it was used to slaughter enemy soldiers.
Gabin Jimasi is excited to meet one of the descendants to share the news of a Hollywood film depicting his ancestors' story.
I'm happy there is a film because it promotes my culture. Women sacrifice themselves to defend this country, but no one talks about it anymore. If we remember her today, justice is being done.
Whatever the content of the film, the main thing is that we talk about them.
For many years, the life of the only regent queen in Benin was left out of the school curriculum. Today, the Beninese are proud that the history of the Amazons is being shown to the world.
And that does it for Eye in Africa. Thank you very much for watching. Stay with us.